Little Luke, aged 5, wakes up drenched in sweat from a feverish nightmare. He saw himself decapitated by a handsome knight amid the jeering laughter of women. The dream feels too real to ignore. In that moment of waking, Luke suddenly realizes the truth. He's not just a child of noble blood. He's reincarnated. More specifically, he's been reborn as Luke Hugaro Descustos, the slothful villain from a romance strategy adult game he once knew. As his small hands tremble and his young heart races, memories from both his old life and the game begin to merge. This world he's in is the setting of that game. Luke, the character he now inhabits, was never the star. He was a second son, spoiled, fat, bitter, and lazy. An early game nuisance who flaunted his status to win over women, only to be cast aside and forgotten as the real protagonist rose in power and gathered his harem. Luke's fate was sealed, mocked, defeated, and eventually discarded like a broken toy. But this Luke, the newly awakened one, refuses to follow that path. For one, he's only 5 years old, far younger than when the main game events begin. That gives him a decade to change everything. Staring at his chubby hands and round cheeks in the mirror, he resolves not to become the grotesque, gluttonous fool he's meant to be. I'll stay cute, he thinks. No, I'll become handsome. If the world still insists on him being a background villain, then he'll at least be a beautiful one. He won't play a part in the political chaos his family is destined to stir, nor will he try to win over heroines. All he wants is a life of comfort, sleeping in, staying attractive, keeping his hands clean of drama. Still, he knows that being completely powerless is dangerous. The original Luke was weak and couldn't defend himself when things fell apart. This Luke plans to train quietly. He'll avoid the spotlight, but strengthen himself just enough to survive. He sits cross-legged on the floor, breathing slowly, trying to feel the flow of mana within him. It's faint at first, but then he senses it. A shimmering mist that glides beneath his skin, the flow of magic energy. Encouraged, he tries casting healing magic. Once, then twice, all the way to 10 times. Each spell chips away at his stamina until, finally, he passes out. When he awakens, morning sunlight filters softly through the window, and a gentle voice greets him. It's a maid, concerned and kind. "Lord Luke, how do you feel?" And so begins the strange second life of a slothful, sharp-minded noble, determined to rewrite his fate. Not by becoming a hero, but by becoming a well-groomed, idle survivor in a story that once promised him ruin. Syrup, a dog demi-human maid in service to the ducal house of Descustos, begins her tale. She was born into service. Her mother served Luke's mother, and Syrup has looked after Lord Luke ever since his birth. Luke's mother passed away shortly after giving birth, and his father, Duke Descustos, withdrew from paternal duties. On Luke's 5th birthday, no family members attended. Only maids and butlers were present. During the celebration, Luke suddenly collapsed from a high fever, leaving everyone terrified. Syrup feared he'd been poisoned. Such substances could disfigure a noble. Though she'd trained in combat under her mother, she still felt unprepared for any killer lurking in the estate. Despite his frail health, Luke remained cheerful. Syrup recalls how he delighted at the sight of her tail, always smiling and playing with it. She resolutely vowed to always protect him. One afternoon, Luke requested the difficult magic tome Basics of Magic instead of a child's picture book. Syrup hesitated. It was far beyond his age, but Luke insisted, motivated by his newfound fascination with magic. With a shy smile, she read aloud while he rested his head on her lap, praising her reading ability and charming her into confidence. The book was dense. It covered what mana was, how to cast magic, distinguishing attributeless from attribute magic, and how magic users were classified. Syrup could manage some life magic and strengthening spells, enough to protect Luke, but attribute magic required rare talent, something Luke, as a noble, might possess. While Syrup explained, Luke fell asleep. She gently brushed his chubby, dignified face and tucked him into bed. Determined to always stand guard, she left quietly, promising, "I will always protect you." Luke lay awake as Syrup's words settled in. A life of comfort isn't built solely on sleep and meals. She reminded him that laziness still required effort. He must wisely plan how to spend free time to avoid becoming the overweight, feckless villain he was destined to be. Luke considered her advice carefully. He truly despised unnecessary movement. When Syrup suggested he learn swordsmanship to protect himself, he refused outright. He had her, Syrup's strength and sword training, and so he declared that she would act as his sword arm instead. Syrup's tail wagged joyfully at the idea. Her excitement was infectious. As the days passed, Luke dedicated himself to quietly increasing his magical ability. He stayed indoors, needing his mana to strengthen both attributeless and attribute magic. He rarely left his room and avoided physical exertion wherever possible. His goal remained the same: to stay handsome, to stay comfortable, and to live off luxury, even if he was villainous by reputation. Syrup, the devoted dog demi-human Maid, watched over young Lord Luke as he continued to grow. Though Luke kept his usual lazy demeanor, Syrup noticed subtle changes. His magical ability was quietly strengthening. She recalled how, from an early age, Luke showed an unusual talent for mana manipulation, something rare even among nobles. While Luke remained comfortable in his soft bed and surroundings, Syrup observed how he diligently practiced magic alone, often focusing on healing and support spells. His desire wasn't to become a mighty warrior, but to maintain his fragile health and protect his leisure. Syrup admired his determination to avoid unnecessary conflict, but also to prepare in his own way. Despite his slothfulness, Luke's bond with Syrup deepened. She became not only his protector, but his confidant, witnessing his private struggles and small victories. Syrup quietly promised herself to safeguard his soft heart and delicate dreams, no matter what challenges awaited them in the treacherous noble world. Luke's peaceful days continued, with Syrup faithfully attending to his needs. One day, a visitor arrived at the estate, a high-ranking official from the Ministry of Magic, Director Mars Glico. He had come to assess Luke's magical abilities, having heard of his potential. As Luke prepared to meet the director, he couldn't help but feel a mix of curiosity and apprehension. He had been practicing his magic in secret, focusing on healing and support spells to avoid drawing attention. Now, faced with an official evaluation, he wondered if his efforts would be enough to impress. Director Glico, a man of considerable stature and authority, was led into the study where Luke awaited. Despite his imposing presence, the director's demeanor was calm and respectful. He acknowledged Luke's lineage and the expectations that came with it. The assessment began with basic tests, evaluating Luke's control over mana and his ability to channel it into spells. Luke performed admirably, his earlier training paying off. However, the director's keen eye noticed something unusual, a faint but distinct aura of a rare attribute magic. Intrigued, Director Glico inquired further, prompting Luke to demonstrate his abilities with more complex spells. As Luke complied, the director's suspicion grew. It became evident that Luke possessed not just one, but two distinct types of attribute magic, an exceedingly rare and valuable trait. The revelation stunned both Luke and the director. Such a combination of attributes was unheard of, and it marked Luke as a prodigy in the magical community. Director Glico, though surprised, maintained his composure and concluded the assessment with a formal acknowledgement of Luke's exceptional talents. As the director departed, Luke sat back, contemplating the implications of this newfound information. His path forward was uncertain, but one thing was clear. His slothful life was about to become far more complicated. Director Mars Glico of the Ministry of Magic paid a visit to the ducal house of Descustos to assess young Luke's magical abilities. Luke had been practicing his magic in secret, focusing on healing and support spells to avoid drawing attention. During the assessment, Luke demonstrated his abilities, and the director, impressed by his talent, decided to use appraisal magic to determine Luke's attribute magic. Appraisal magic was a rare and secretive form of attributeless magic that allowed one to perceive another's attribute magic without chanting. Luke, ever observant, deduced the use of appraisal magic despite his eyes being closed and the absence of a visible magic circle. This revelation surprised Director Glico, who had not expected Luke to recognize the magic. The appraisal revealed that Luke possessed two rare and previously undocumented attribute magics: sleep and sloth. These attributes were unique and not found in any records, indicating Luke's exceptional and unprecedented magical potential. Luke, with his usual nonchalance, expressed his understanding of the attributes and their implications, leaving the director both impressed and intrigued by Luke's composure and insight. Testa Hugaro Descustos, the first son of the ducal house of Descustos, prided himself on his exceptional abilities. Gifted with rare iron attribute magic, he excelled in swordsmanship and academics, always striving to surpass his peers. His relentless pursuit of perfection stemmed from a deep-seated fear of being overshadowed. The birth of his younger siblings only intensified his insecurities. While his younger brother, Luke, was initially a source of envy due to his charm and potential, Testa soon dismissed him as a mere sloth, unworthy of competition. However, Luke's unexpected interest in skincare and grooming caught Testa off guard, leading him to believe Luke had lost his mind. Despite his father's indifference toward Luke's eccentricities, Testa's sister, Iris, and even their mother began to emulate Luke's habits, further fueling Testa's confusion and resentment. As Testa prepared to enroll in the Royal Academy at 15, he focused on honing his skills to ensure he would not be outdone by his peers, including the first prince and the son of the commander of the kingdom's First Knight Order. His daily routine was rigorous: early morning swordsmanship practice, followed by breakfast and study sessions, magic lessons after lunch, and review of his studies in the evening. In between, he observed his father's work, learning the ropes as the next duke. One day, while heading to the training grounds, Testa overheard a conversation among the knights. They were discussing Luke's rare attribute magic, which piqued Testa's interest. This revelation added a new layer to his perception of Luke, who had always been a figure of disdain and confusion in his eyes. Iris Hugaro Descustos, the eldest daughter of the ducal house of Descustos, prided herself on her beauty. She believed that all things beautiful in the world existed solely for her. Her beauty was her identity, and she reveled in the admiration it garnered from everyone around her. However, recently, she had been troubled by two things. The first was her younger brother, Luke. He was 1 year younger than her and had been fat and unattractive as a child, which disgusted her. She had paid him no attention, as she was only interested in beautiful things. But since he turned 6, Luke began to grow leaner and healthier. He started using face wash, face moisturizer, milky lotion, and other beauty products to enhance his appearance. His pursuit of beauty impressed Iris, and she couldn't help but feel a sense of jealousy. Despite herself, she found herself fantasizing about her brother in ways that made her uncomfortable. She had always been the center of attention, but now Luke's beauty was rivaling her own. This realization stirred feelings she had never experienced before. The second thing troubling Iris was her friend, Karen. Karen was a lady from a count's house, one rank below Iris's own. She had a kind heart and often brought Iris sweets she had made herself. However, Karen had become fat and unattractive, which embarrassed Iris. She couldn't stand seeing her friend's appearance deteriorate and had become increasingly distant. One day, during a tea party, Karen presented Iris with some muffins she had baked. While the sweets were delicious, Iris couldn't overlook Karen's appearance. She bluntly told Karen that she couldn't handle seeing her lately, causing Karen to burst into tears and run away. The other young ladies laughed, but Iris felt a pang of guilt. Despite her feelings of guilt, Iris couldn't change her nature. She continued to surround herself with beauty and distance herself from anything she deemed unattractive. Her obsession with beauty had become her downfall, leading her to neglect the people who cared about her. Luke continued to delve deeper into his unique attribute, magic, sleep, and sloth, under the guidance of Mr. March. He discovered that sleep allowed him to put others to sleep, with variations like sleep time to specify duration and sleep delete to forcibly wake someone. These abilities proved to be powerful tools for manipulation and control. Luke also developed a new spell, Sleep Arrow, enabling him to put distant targets to sleep without physical contact. Despite his magical advancements, Luke faced a dilemma regarding food. Syrup, his loyal maid, was excellent at cleaning and attending to his needs, but lacked culinary skills. Luke considered finding someone else to cook for him, but he was wary of trusting others, especially family members or servants. One day, while taking a bath, Luke overheard a girl's anxious voice. He discovered a plump but cute girl, seemingly lost and panicking. She was dressed like a noble and appeared to be a guest of his sister, Iris. The girl was embarrassed upon seeing Luke's bare upper body and quickly apologized. Luke's encounter with the girl marked the beginning of new developments in his otherwise slothful life. Karen C. Caribbean, a 12-year-old girl from a merchant family, had always admired the beauty and grace of Iris Jugaro Descustos, the eldest daughter of the ducal house of Descustos. Karin's admiration extended to Iris's older brother, Testa, whose dignified appearance and dedication to study and training captivated her. However, Karen's own appearance had changed over time. She had become overweight and unattractive, leading her to feel unworthy of standing beside her idols. Despite her insecurities, she continued to admire them from afar. One day, Karen baked muffins and brought them to a tea party at the Duke's residence, hoping to cheer up Iris, who had been sighing with a sorrowful look on her face. However, when she offered the sweets to Iris, she was met with a cold response. "Karen, the sweets you brought are delicious, but I can't handle seeing you lately." Iris's words pierced Karen's heart. She immediately realized that Iris was referring to her appearance, and she could hear the other young ladies laughing at her. Overwhelmed with shame and sadness, Karen ran away from the tea party, tears blurring her vision. As she wandered through the vast grounds of the Duke's residence, lost and alone, Karen's mind was consumed by negative thoughts. She feared she would be lost forever. Suddenly, she heard a voice. "Is someone there?" Turning toward the sound, Karen was taken aback by the sight of a boy. His skin was as beautiful as polished marble, his body toned and graceful. and his hair shone with an otherworldly luster. Karin, accustomed to seeing mermaid men with healthy tanned skin, was struck by the boy's ethereal beauty. The boy introduced himself as Luke Hugaro Descustos, Iris's younger brother. Karin, overcome with awe and embarrassment, prostrated herself before him, unwilling to look at him directly. Luke, unfazed by her behavior, chuckled warmly. "You're an interesting person, Miss Karin." He then asked if she could use attribute magic, expressing his interest in magic. Karin, though taken aback, nodded eagerly. I can. With a smile, Luke crouched down to her level, his eyes filled with genuine curiosity. "Can you show me?" Karin, her heart fluttering, agreed. She retrieved ingredients and a pot from her pouch, preparing to demonstrate her magical prowess.